Hello everyone and welcome back. This is Bora with another video. Today, before I go into my whole Boson series, and I know some of you guys have been waiting patiently for that, I think that there's a big key concept that needs to be explored. Before we go into that, it'll help you understand the rationale and the math behind some of the picks. So today I want to talk all about enhanced damage for physical damage only. I will do a future video on facets and resistances and conviction and all that kind of stuff and how that affects your damage. But for today, I just want to focus on physical damage only. So I do think with enhanced damage that there's a lot that needs to be understood. How enhanced damage works on weapon, how it works off weapon, how to calculate total physical damage. And then most importantly, I think there's a critical bug in the game that needs to be explored, and I'll talk about that as well. So hopefully that can help you guys make mistakes. And I think one of the key takeaways from this video will be what piece of gear that you want to focus on upgrading next and what to put in your sockets. I think those are kind of the key takeaways. So if that's interesting to you guys, stick around. Please subscribe to the channel for future content. Again, I am going to follow this up with a Boson series. I know, sorry guys, I'm a little late. I just had some real life stuff going on. And yeah, anyway, so let's talk about enhanced damage. So there's a couple of things that you need to understand. Now, so for calculating the, for like rebuilding the tooltip, for instance, of your weapon, basically what you would do is take the enhanced damage and apply it against the base damage of your weapon. So, unfortunately, there's been a couple of changes in Project Diablo 2 that might make this a little bit harder to figure out. But for instance, if you go to the PD2 wiki, you'll see the base damage of a Windforce. Obviously, that uses a Hydra bow, and therefore the base damage is 11 to 75. So what that means is I would take any on-weapon enhanced damage and apply it against that number, that 11 and 75. And then obviously, down the road you can average out just to, give kind of an apples-to-apples comparison as you choose to, choose one jewel or one, like an ohm, for instance, over another. So we'll just quickly flip to what that looks like. I'll actually unhide some rows here. And so for instance, I'll actually, I'll flip back in game very quickly. I will show you what my current Windforce looks like. So this has a 318 ED base. It has 300 enhanced damage worth of jewels, obviously the ohms. And by the way, ohms are not the best in slot for this, and I'll depict that later. But so anyway, we have 618 enhanced damage total, and then we have the 287 max damage that is added on top of that, which is calculated after the ED is applied. So if we want to recreate this, and again, like let's just take a mental snapshot here, two-handed damage 78 to 825. So if I pull open, I've been doing a couple of calculations, and actually to avoid spoiling anything for a future video, I will hide a couple columns. And so anyway, you'll see that my total enhanced damage on the bow is 618, and the maximum damage that I get from the levels, obviously you get a certain amount of max damage per level on your Windforce, is 287. So 287, and as you can see, the total min is 78.9. So again, let's flip back. So we got total min 78 and total max we got 825. So if we revert back into game, you will see that we have 78 and 825. So that's how you do that calculation. You apply the total enhanced damage to the min and then to the max, and then you add either min, all sources of min or max on the bow. Obviously, in this case, I have 287 max damage from the bow. So that's the first key concept to know. The second is how offhand or off-weapon enhanced damage works. So basically, it takes that number, that's 78 to 825, and then it further multiplies that on top. So what does that mean? Our total physical damage, therefore, becomes the base weapon damage times the on-weapon enhanced damage. If your weapon is ethereal, the bonus is 50%, which is a very key concept to know for anybody that is not playing a boson. Obviously, the importance of having an ethereal weapon cannot be overstated because it is multiplicative. It's not additive. It's not like, oh, I just added another ohm. It is multiplied after the ED is calculated, which makes a huge, huge, huge difference. So if you guys are playing any other melee class and you have the option of choosing an ethereal weapon versus non-ethereal, you want to choose ethereal. Even there's a lot of situations where like an ethereal 3 open socket is better, probably significantly better than a 4 open socket, non-ethereal, for instance. So anyway, let's go back to this calculation. So the base weapon damage times the on-weapon enhanced damage times the ethereal bonus if applicable. Again, that's 50%. Plus all sources of min and max damage and plus damage. So if you have min and max, it'll show on the weapon as adds 10 to 25 damage, for instance. And then you multiply by off-weapon enhanced damage. So what does this mean to us? Do we want a better base weapon, or do we want more off-weapon enhanced damage based on this calculation? So again, I'm going to flip back to my little spreadsheet here, and I have an example of this. So this is an example where in this situation, I've added 50 on-weapon enhanced damage and subtracted 50 off-weapon enhanced damage, and then for the second example, I've done the flip side. So you can see that off-weapon enhanced damage is more important than on-weapon enhanced damage. So what's the takeaway here? If you guys are choosing to upgrade your next piece of gear, let's say you're choosing between a better wind force or a 3 open socket giant skull, for instance, or 3 open socket Valkelm, or whatever the upgrade is. Not everybody's going for 3 open sockets, so maybe even a 2 open socket G skull or a 2 open socket Veil of Steel, something like that. Where do you want your ED coming from? You want it coming from your off weapon enhanced damage. So always get a good base of your weapon first. That goes without saying. But then when it comes time to upgrade, don't fixate on your weapon all the time. If you have opportunities to make enhancements to your corruptions or your off-weapon pieces of gear, this calculation shows that you really want to focus on those off-weapon upgrades. So that's the critical piece number 1. So again, guys, if you are choosing to upgrade your gear, sorry, I just turned off the wrong. Struggling, boys. It's a real struggle. If you guys are upgrading, then make sure you're focused. Like, obviously, don't lose sight. If you have an opportunity to make a major upgrade to your weapon, for instance, if you're going from a 2 open socket wind force to a 5 open socket wind force, that can be considered. But guys, there's math behind all of this, and you guys. If you guys want to reach out to me and have you help you out with those calculations, then I'm more than happy to do so. Now, the next thing that is very important to talk about, actually, you know what? I'm going to first revert back to just talking about what do you want to put in your weapon. So let's say I've got again, I've got a wind force with 6 ohms in it, and I keep saying again and again, this is actually not the best thing to have in this weapon. And so what's the rationale behind that? I will pull open my trusty spreadsheet again, and you can see, so again, let's just talk about that on-weapon calculation again. So you take the min damage and the max damage. So min damage and the max damage. And then you multiply it by the enhanced damage. Now, any addition to max damage or min damage, the calculation is really simple there. The average damage that it's going to add is just the max divided by 2, because obviously it's not affecting the min. Well, obviously the average calculation is the min plus the max divided by 2. That's your average damage. So anything you apply to either one of those, you're just going to divide by 2. So it makes it nice and simple to do that math. But let's look at what an ohm rune does. So an ohm rune in the wind force adds 21.5 average damage. Now, a 4015 joule is going to end up adding 24.7 average damage. So that's a pretty interesting concept for everybody to understand, is that there are a number of situations where the ohm, which is the most ED you can get on any socketable in the game, is not always the best in socket option. In fact, there are a number of jewels in the case of the Wind Force where it is not better. For instance, even a 40 ED 9 max jewel is going to be better technically than an ohm rune. Now, but let's all put this into perspective, of course, is that not everybody wants to shell out, a 40-15 max jewel. I don't even know what those are going for this season. It could be, 10 high runes or 50. Who even knows? I don't know what people are charging for this season. Now, is that worth it to you to get 6 of these for that extra bit of damage? Now, again, keeping in mind that off-weapon enhanced damage will now be multiplying this number again. So, obviously, these things do add up. But is it worth investing in a 40-15 jewel? Maybe not. But if you find a 35-14 jewel for cheaper than an ohm rune, it's better than an ohm rune in your weapon. So in this situation, you're going to want to do it. Now, how do you guys know whether or not to use an ohm rune or a 40-15 jewel? Now, there is a breakpoint, and I have that over here. So again, let's just use the average damage. We have an ohm rune, this is the average damage of a Hydra bow. For instance, 11 to 75. Add the two together, divide by 2, you get 43. So you can see ohm rune again adds 21.5 average damage. The 40-15 adds 24.7. A 30 max jewel, again, you just divide that by 2. That'll add 15 average damage. Now, so, okay, we've already gone over this. Now, when does it make sense for us to use an ohm over a 40-15? So the higher the average damage of the base of the weapon, the more likely it is that you want to use an ohm rune. In fact, that break point is that break-even point, I should say, is exactly 75. So you can see in this situation, if the average damage of your base weapon is 75, an ohm rune and a 40-15 will have the exact same effect. So guys, if you have an ethereal grandfather or any two-handed pike or whatever, pole arm or any of that kind of stuff, where the average damage is very high, you want to use an ohm rune. And again, this is going to save you guys a ton, because I actually saw last season one of the top Zealers on the ladder actually had a weapon that was socketed with ohm runes 40-15s, when it actually was not the right play. So not only did they spend 60 high runes on jewels, but they also had a suboptimal weapon. So let's just quickly show what does that look like. If now we have 76 average damage, you can actually see that ohm is actually outperforming the 40-15 max jewel. So that's just an important breakpoint for you guys to know. Just keep that number in mind. It's a nice clean one, fortunately. 75. If the average damage of your weapon is 75, do not use a 40-15 anymore. Then you want to use an ohm rune. Again, if you're looking to optimize damage. So now we can see the effect of ohm versus the ED max, but that only works for on-weapon enhanced damage. And the reason for that being is there is a very, very nasty bug in this game that has existed for a very, very long time. I think actually since the inception of Jewels into the game. And what that bug is, it's the ED max or ED min or ED min and max, whatever the jewel may be. If you are to put that in a non-weapon, it's going to create a bug. And that bug can be very harmful in a lot of situations. So let's run through there's actually 2 of these that we can skip, but let's run through these 9 scenarios here. So your item has innate ED. So think G-Skull or Valkhelm or Veil of Steel. Those have built-in enhanced damage, and you socket it with a min or a max or a min jewel. No bug. You're in the clear. if you have an item if you socket an item with an ED jewel, then you socket it with a max or a min jewel, no bug. You're in the clear again. Case 3 and 4, guys, I went through the PD2 wiki. I couldn't find any armor pieces that have min or max damage. I know back in 1.08, for instance, there was the 1.08 Ariat's helm, which did give max damage. I could be wrong. Maybe there's a set item that did this or that does this currently, but I don't think so. So let's ignore case 3 and 4 and skip to number 5. If you socket an item with a max jewel, then an ED jewel, the ED is only going to apply to the minimum and not the maximum. So that's really, really ugly, guys. Like, I can maybe I'll if somebody wants me to quantify this, I can give an example in the comments down below. I don't have anything prepared right now. Actually, do I? Yeah, I do. I do. Of course, I do. So anyway, we'll take a look at that after. So you might be looking at this and thinking this is literally just the reverse of case 2, which it is. So it literally comes down to the order that you put things in, which, if it's coming down to that, guys, just avoid it entirely. Just don't even cross this bridge unless, of course, you want to pull up this video, open up this screenshot and make sure that you're doing it the right way. Fine. But I think just avoiding this situation in general is best. So again, that's if you socket an item with an ED and then a max jewel, there's no bug. If you socket it with a max jewel and then an ED jewel, you have a bug all of a sudden. Case 6, if you socket an item with a min jewel and then an ED jewel, the ED will only apply to the maximum and not the minimum. So what's interesting about these two different scenarios is like the bug actually has a pretty different effect based on the weapon base. So if you have, like, for instance, a Wind Force, right, which Hydra Bow has a 11 to 75, it's got a pretty low minimum and a pretty high maximum. This bug doesn't actually hurt as badly, but it still hurts. So let's just avoid it entirely, guys, because again, like, if you have a weapon, this obviously has a huge variance, 11 to 75. Now, there's a lot of maces, for instance, that might be like 41 to 47. In that situation, the ED min or the ED max bug is really going to hurt you. But like I said, guys, let's just try to avoid this in general. And I just want to call out all these scenarios where the bug happens so that you guys don't make this mistake. The next case, you socket an item with an ED max jewel. The ED only applies to the min and not the max. So guys, this has nothing to do with ordering or anything like that. If you put an ED max jewel in a non-weapon, you are going to get this bug. And again, this bug sucks. I will pull open on my screen what the effect of this bug is when you use a 40-15 max. That's a pretty crude example, but it'll get the point across for sure. Next case, you socket an ED with an ED, or you socket an item with an ED min jewel. Same thing. The ED is only going to apply to the maximum. Again, it's not going to hurt as bad, but it's better just to ignore it. Honestly, it'd be a better scenario just to use. Let's say you go out and invest in a 40 ED 10 min jewel, which might be a couple high runes. You're actually better off just using a 40 ED jewel than you are using that really expensive 40 ED 10 min jewel. And case 9, and this is only possible with a rare jewel, but if it has ED min and max, the ED won't apply to either the min or the max. So this is a pretty ugly bug. And again, I'm just going to quickly pull open my little thing here. Sorry, I don't even know what this is anymore, guys. I'm just going to hide this. But all told, let's use the example of this is not a Wind Force, this is a Hydra Bow. So if our Hydra Bow is our base and we have 11 min, 15 max, this is, and then again, this will be off weapon. Let's just pretend that this weapon has no enhanced damage for the sake of doing this. This is what should happen if you were to put a 40-15, and this is what does happen because of the bug. As you can see, there's a massive difference in the enhanced damage because the enhanced damage is only applying to the minimum damage of the bow. So this is critically important that you guys avoid it. And so I thought it was super important to do this because, for instance, when I'm talking about what the best in slot helmet is, And I talk about using ED IS jewels. And so again, I've now said, guys, for WinForce, the best in socket jewel is a 4015. So you might be thinking, well, then, okay, let's use a 4015 jewel everywhere. Let's use it in arterials. Let's use it in our G-Skull. So that, of course, is going to create the bug. So when I talk about what is best in slot for the helmet slot, and then I talk about what the best jewels to put in it, you're going to be like, Bora, why aren't you putting 4015 max jewels in it? Now you guys know. So if you don't need increased attack speed, therefore the best jewels become 40 ED with stats. So 40 ED 9 strength, 40 ED 9 dex. Those are great jewels, especially for the boson. The 9 dex obviously adds 9 enhanced damage. Now, on the flip side, if the 9 strength is going to save you hard points in strength, that'll ultimately come out as dex. So in a lot of scenarios, I'll say it doesn't matter if you use a 40 ED 9 strength or 40 ED 9 dex. So long as you are not over-indexed on strength, it's not going to matter which jewel you use. But I just wanted to clarify all of this before I go down the path of talking about what's best in slot, what's best in socket for all those things. I thought it was pretty important that I clear up all of this first. So again, guys, takeaways. Let's just talk about these really quickly. 1. We've obviously talked about the difference between on-hand or on-weapon and off-weapon enhanced damage. So if you're choosing to upgrade your gear and the math is about the same, I can add 50 enhanced damage, or let's say, I can get a better G-Skull and it's going to add 30 enhanced damage for me, or I can upgrade my WinForce to get another 30 ED there. Choose the G-Skull because the offhand enhanced damage is better. Takeaway 2. Focus on what is best in socket. Obviously, everybody has different budgets, but if you have a weapon with an average damage of less than 75, remember that the best in socket is not going to be an Ohm Rune. Of course, a 49, for instance, is not going to be better than an Ohm Rune if the weapon average damage is 70. But again, in the example of the Hydra Bow, where the average damage is 43, then there's a lot of jewels that are better than an Ohm Rune. So pay attention to that. And then takeaway 3, guys, avoid the ED max, ED min max bug. I'll pull that up on the screen again so you guys maybe can screenshot this or something. Just avoid this like the plague, guys, because it'll really, really badly affect all of your damage. So anyways, guys, hope you found this valuable. The Boson series, Best in Slot series, is to come. Definitely wanted to call out these key concepts beforehand so that, we can avoid having those discussions in the comments section where someone's, inevitably going to say, hey, Bora, why is the 4015s better? So hopefully, again, this clears up everything. So guys, again, if you have any questions on this, hit me up on Discord or in the comments below. Bora, Bora, hashtag 7700 on Discord. I answer everybody back all the time. It might take me a little bit, but I always get back to everybody. Or like I said, leave a comment down below. So see you guys for the Boson series, and hope you guys enjoy your PD2. Cheers.